Hey guys, another episode of Magnolia House Podcast. Trying not to be too nervous or fucked up. I got an eye issue right now. That's why we're two douchebags wearing sunglasses. So
That's not the only reason. It's super sunny right now.
yeah,
Outside.
yeah, outside. I got some light sensitivity
It's
too.
so sunny outside. We have to wear sunglasses inside.
But it's like, God. Well, it doesn't seem any. Isn't that weird? That it can get hotter, but not necessarily any brighter. But I know that's like a
No. But if you think about it, I mean, because you think about the sun. The sun is what's causing the heat, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. I guess it's not just the sun too. It's the air and the
But
amount of sun that gets through the ozone and all this stuff and all the things.
My dad was telling me yesterday that I think he was saying like Canada's like in the mid 120s or something like that.
I heard certain places are like even on like
the world is on
coast.
fire right now.
Yeah,
that's so insane. But I what is the difference? Like, is it climate change?
I think it's just I mean, the climate is just such like so many systems happening at once, right? That I think it's like all of a sudden there's this like confluence of events that have just been triggered, and now it's like heat wave.
And I'm just wondering if this is going to be a normal thing. You know?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, like this isn't too out of the norm. I feel like for a place like here where it does get really hot, but like the fact that Seattle is about as bad as it is here, and
but then also they got snow this last winter.
Sure, yeah, but I mean that's again the climate thing and not necessarily. It's just like.
But does Seattle normally get snow?
I don't know. I mean, it snows, but not like buckets or not like inches.
It was
inches,
fucking bad the other year, like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the things I was talking to you about when I texted you was the idea that because we've been having religious discussions and all that.
A lot of discussions, but
and also I've been looking into getting an astronomer on because I think that'd be so cool. Mm-hmm. But I texted you about the idea of stars being ghosts, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which it's kind of
maybe you can just explain what the thought you had was.
Because essentially like the light from stars takes so long to reach us that by the time it does reach us, the star that emitted that light is long since dead.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about ghosts a lot lately and supernatural experiences.
Yeah.
And
it might have started with Interstellar. Because there's a little bit of a ghost theme in that.
But it also, I think that is what triggered it. But also Clem was talking about her ghost experiences, and I can't not put ghost experiences in
and you just get triggered.
Quotes.
You just get triggered when people talk
I know,
about
I
ghosts.
do, but it to me, it just seems... I know you can't start from the position of like, I'm right, but I do feel like I'm right when I say I don't think there is anything supernatural. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Okay.
I think there is zero supernatural anything in this universe. Uh-huh. It just doesn't seem... And if there is anything like that, do you not think that anything that interfaces with our reality with enough knowledge could be explained by science?
So I think that science has the ability to explain anything. But again, like I was saying the other night, that like science also consider like it has to have a structure to it. So anything that is an outlier in its schema is considered like an anomaly, and then isn't part
or
of the data
yet
set.
To be explained though, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or yet to be understood.
It's like our schema does not account for this, so we assume it's like an aberration until we can broaden our knowledge base to include that within it.
Yeah, but if I were to experience anything supernatural or anything like that, I would accept it as a part of our reality and therefore something potentially to be understood by science.
Yeah, and I think everything could be understood by science, but again, like in my opinion, science is top down, so it has its schema and explains things within the language
weird.
that it has.
It's always weird when you say it's top down though, because it's bottom up. It's like start from.
I think like the scientific frame of mind is bottom up, and that you're trying to observe things and then build a schema off of that. But once you have that structure, again, like the Newtonian perception of physics versus the quantum perception of physics, it has to like the Newtonian perception of physics doesn't account for like quantum events or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So then you have to create a structure that then accounts for all that.
Yeah, which we've yet to do, right?
We
combine them.
No. I mean, once you blow up quantum events, they start to look more Newtonian. But like it's just a different level, right? And it's just at that point, so now I don't even know where we're at now. I don't know enough about science, but like we seem to pretty well understand the quantum level of things to a degree. Not necessarily in application, but I think in
there's that quote that says, if you think you understand quantum physics, you don't.
Sure. But like there is a schema there, and then everything is explained by that schema.
Yeah.
And that's how it's top down. So we have the structure, and then we just use that to explain everything in our experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But when you were saying, what did you just say?
Stars?
No, something you said made me think about, how like anything that happens in the world can be explained by science, right?
Yes.
It
or
always
could potentially be explained by science.
It always makes me think of the like neurological, biochemical processes that we use to explain things. And like when somebody says, like, oh, like I'm feeling happy, right? Like that's an intelligible sentence that we all understand.
Yeah.
Like we all know what happiness is to a degree, and maybe it differs a little bit, but like
happiness is cocaine. No,
well, I mean, it could be for some people, right?
Yeah.
But what a scientist might say is, oh, your dopamine levels are spiking.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a scientific way of explaining it, but I don't think it gets you any more explanation than just saying, I feel happy.
Yeah.
Right. And like.
But do you think a sufficiently advanced species that could analyze every nuance of human existence, do you think they could fully understand that in a deeper degree?
The whole dopamine thing?
Yeah, like our body chemistry, everything, our social interactions, all of that.
I just wonder what it gets you. It almost just, when you say, like, when you talk about dopamine, unless you're talking about maybe a false sense of happiness versus more authentic or natural sense of happiness, maybe there's some use there. But otherwise, it just seems like you're using scientific language to explain something that doesn't need to be explained scientifically.
Yeah.
So,
do you not feel ghosts need to be explained scientifically?
When you said that thing about how stars, you could accept the word ghost used for like,
and to me, a ghost would be like some kind of non-tangible remnant of a once real existence.
But what do you mean by non-tangible?
But yeah, I guess in light would be...
It's observable.
Yeah, it's observable and tangible.
You can experience it in some way.
But when people speak of ghosts, what is a ghost? It's somebody died,
right,
and some part of them is still here.
So here's where I think you get hung up, because when you said that about the star, my response was like, well, yeah, I agree with you, because the term ghost just isn't a scientific word. Yeah. And I think you get caught up on the definition of ghost as if like there's like a set
standard.
This is what a ghost is in like some way you can like nail it down in a scientific term that like isn't explicable like any other way.
Yeah.
And like the ghost hunter stuff where they have like EMF readers and like all that business.
Started.
I think that's an attempt to like quantify
make money.
The experience. Well,
it's an attempt to make money.
That is no. I mean that whole show is for sure, but like
it's like Bigfoot. Give it a break, guys.
What do you mean Bigfoot?
Every Bigfoot show.
Oh,
maybe some people do believe.
Some people really do.
Yeah, no, people do really believe.
And I think that whole experience, there is, I would say, like psychologically, there is just a need for people there to be mystery. Out there.
Yeah, and I definitely have that need. Like when I was a kid, and I should probably get back into this stuff, but like not necessarily this stuff I'm about to name, but like I was so into like recently found ancient shipwrecks and the Bermuda Triangle and all, and like uncovered ancient civilizations, and all that mystery is so cool, but it's real. It's not ghosts.
Well, I mean, so like I think I used to like really like be all about the Ghost Hunter thing. One of my favorite shows was like the Ghost Hunter show on Sci-Fi Channel or whatever it was on.
But were you actively believing they were actually looking for ghosts? I don't think there's a single one that is a TV show that is really...
Well, I think the way I rationalized it then was that like these were people who had their own mysterious experiences with the quote-unquote supernatural. Yeah. And just so don't forget it when you're saying that too. I've definitely thought about the fact that the word supernatural is literally just the word supernatural experience. Like it's like a...
Shouldn't it be like supranatural?
I think supernatural would maybe be a better way. It's like beyond natural.
Oh, okay.
Supernatural.
I would think it'd be like really natural, like a fucking rock.
Well, I think that's what supernatural kind of gives the sense of, that it's just like a like natural experience that goes beyond.
Yeah.
Almost goes to our limit, but I think supranat. I don't know.
I don't even know what supra means.
I don't know. So, yeah, I don't know prefixes in Latin enough to
I don't know them in
Maybe
English.
we shouldn't say. But I've definitely thought about the fact that we just call it supernatural.
Yeah.
And like for me, the experience of ghosts for people is like a very psychological one.
Yeah.
But when I watch those shows, I think I rationalized it by thinking like the one I watched, which was like it was called Ghost Hunters. It's the Atlantic Paranormal Society. And it was a really good show, and the people there were like they were pretty down to earth. They were like plumbers in the daytime, and then like they did ghost hunting at night or something like that.
Shoot, Bill, this plumbing ain't making us enough money. We should make a ghost show.
Well, they didn't sound like that.
That's what I imagined.
That's how some of them sound nowadays. But like their whole thing was like they had supernatural experiences in their life.
Yeah.
And they went out and like they quote unquote went to disprove ghost occurrences.
Yeah.
So they would go, and there'd be episodes where they'd be like, they would basically be trying to debunk everything.
Yeah.
And
so
like
they have 100% success rate.
And all they would do is be like, yeah, like this is like what we collected. This is the video, audio stuff we collected, and like these are the things we just can't explain.
Yeah.
Everything else we're able to explain. And there have been some episodes where it's like, oh, like these people were clearly just lying to us, or like we were able to kind of debunk everything that these people were claiming based on what was happening in there. And they were one of the only ghost shows I feel like I've ever seen where they like basically they discount every like light orb experience they see. Yeah. Because they're like,
but also it's like
mostly it's just dust.
It's all everything is anecdotal. Like when they're going to check, like, yeah, I saw a ghost. Tell me about it. It's like I saw this Instagram post that was if you were a mad scientist that could do anything you want with no moral boundaries, what is one test that you would do? And this guy was so cool. He's like, if I was a mad scientist and I didn't give a shit about human life, I would get 100 people, or he said some number, 10 or 100, whatever, and I would stop all their hearts. And then I would have before I did that, there would be a hidden sign, like a symbol or something that he puts on the floor. And then and it's hidden at first, and then he stops all their hearts, and he said, I'll wait a little bit and revive them, and those who had an out of body experience. Oh, and then while their heart is stopped, he uncovers the sign.
Okay.
And he says, and if out of body experiences are real, there should be a percentage of people who could come out of themselves and see it and remember it and bring it back.
Right.
And that's like I think would be a solid test to see if because I think out of body experiences are real, but I don't think they are exactly that. I don't think you're going out of body, and I think it's strictly a chemical thing going on in your brain.
Huh. I mean, so I think that it's got to be a chemical thing. Like just because the way the world works, like everything that happens through the like medium of matter, which is chemical. Any like thing that exists.
Yeah.
And like I'm sure there's matter we don't understand or we can't see or all that stuff, right? But I think the conceit of that experiment is that what an out-of-body experience is like. Yeah. And like...
But so most people describe an out-of-body experience as floating above their body. Like people will have near-death experiences and be on an operating table and be like, yeah, I saw myself being operated on. I came out and I woke up and I retained that memory. So, and if that's the case, and I don't deny that you've experienced that, but I also experienced dreams. Were those dreams real? They were real in my mind,
right?
Just as much as like, a lot of people say if you have an encounter with a spiritual being or a god or an entity like that when you're tripping on mushrooms or something, that experience is, Rogan always talks about, is like, what is, if you really experienced that in your mind, and it changed you as a result of it, what is the difference between that experience and actually having met a god?
Right.
There's virtually no difference.
Right. Exactly.
But that doesn't mean it's real in a physical sense, like this fucking table is real.
But that's, again, assuming that a god needs to be real in that physical sense, and a god can't be real just in the psychological, spiritual sense.
For me, it does.
Here's
me,
the question.
I would have to have it be real.
Do you believe that people have a spirit of sorts?
No.
There's no essence to who you are.
I think it's your brain. So there was some interview I was listening to. They asked that same question. He's like, if you were to have a spirit, it would be your mind. If you affect if you nudge any little part of your brain matter, it drastically affects your whole being.
But what about the whole sense of the fact that like at any given moment you're constantly physically a different person?
Yeah.
So is there anything that makes you Tony?
But it's like
Alex, or is it just like you are this matter state of Tony now, and then a different matter state of Tony later? And what, what would make you Tony in between those two matter states?
Like the continuity. So like Bill Nye had this. He was describing evolution, and he's like, it's like building a bike while it's moving. It's like, and it has to constantly for the evolutionary metaphor he was using or whatever, he was like, it has to still be functionally a bike. So it has to be, you can change one little screw or change out the handlebar, but it still has to be moving. And I think that's like a personality. It's like you're always you, but by the time you've switched out every single part of the bike, it's essentially a new bike, but the continuity is what of it being
still is a bike.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would still be a person, but what makes you Tony and not Frank?
Yeah.
How come all of a sudden you don't change? How come we don't call you a different person?
Oh, yeah.
And like I think to some degree, even in our natural way of talking about it, like we say that we are different people as we grow and age.
Yeah.
But we still assume there is something there that connects us to our past. So again, like even if you take the ultra like physicalist matter like idea
twins.
of world, it's like you can still say that like what makes you Tony is the way you're put together, right?
Yeah.
It's the structure of the way you are put together versus the structure of anybody else.
Yeah.
Or just the accumulation of experience that your body has gone through is what you can call Tony. And like, what's the issue of saying that structure is in some way your spirit? Like, you know, I think it's still just the definition of the word.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, definitely.
And like,
but also if we're talking spirit as in something that lingers after the body is gone,
sure.
You know, and I think another conceptualization of that could be, you know, the effect you've had on the outside world, be it your artwork or your family. Like, it's crazy, you know, we listen to Freddie Mercury, and his spirit essentially is still alive in this world because of his art that he's put out and the way he's affected.
The stamp he's left on the world in some way, or people.
And that's another lenient definition of the word spirit that I could vibe with. But it's a far cry from a ghost. You know?
Well, so one thing I want to say, and then I kind of want to like pivot a little bit to the religion stuff. But when you're saying that, it makes me think of like, you know, people. It's a very common experience, from what I understand. Again, I haven't met a lot of people, but I've just heard that it's pretty common when a person loses their spouse or their partner or someone really close to them in their life, and they die. It's not uncommon for them to continue to talk to that person, and like as if that person is there, and to them it's a very like they are speaking to that person, not just their idea of them in their head. Even though I would say also that it is just their own mind creating that thing, but clearly it's left a big enough imprint that it almost functions autonomously, and they can imagine what that person would say, even if it disagrees with what they might think naturally. And like that is very much a ghost. And like people even report seeing the person or things like that, and it's like, how is that not a ghost?
Right? They might have people who actually see them might just have a very hyperactive visual sensory imagination. You know?
And even if it's all in their head, I think that is something that like it just can point to the fact that people are more sensitive to being impressioned or like, you know, carrying around that like energy or whatever from what they've experienced.
But that's quite a bit different than somebody telling me a ghost knocked over my flower vase or something, you know, like that's and in that sense, I just don't think there's anything.
Right. And I would say in certain cases, I think it's natural occurrences, like meeting up with like super like, or like psychological like sensitivity. So Jung is really big on like synchronicity. So like when your mind is open to something and something happens that seems to line up with it in the world, it's like
when you're thinking about calling somebody and
they call you,
right when you look at your phone, they're calling you.
It is a coincidence of sorts, and he would call it acausal. So they are not connected in the causal chain of events, but there is a coincidental like happenstance that shows some greater structure to the universe.
So this is a real grotesque example of that in a sense. You remember I went to use the bathroom because there's no bathroom at this posh studio. I went to McDonald's. Do you remember you know what I'm bringing up? Yeah, you'll know in a second.
Okay.
So I went to the McDonald's, as I do when I need to go to the bathroom, because again, we have no bathroom here. And I'm taking a toozy, and I get up, I go to wash my hands, and as I'm walking away, I notice like there's a trail behind me. And what do you know? I fucking stepped in human shit.
Oh, yeah.
Human shit. And keep in mind, the second time in 2 weeks at that same place.
Oh, God.
Jesus Christ. So it's safe
McDonald's.
to say I don't go there anymore. But I was just, I was thinking about it. I was like, just my fucking luck. I was like, this is how this went down. Some person that I have no connection to sat down one day, cooked a dinner maybe, ate it, walked around, did their thing, eventually ended. Okay, it goes even deeper. Somebody grew some plants or something, or an animal.
Right.
That animal was eventually processed, or the plants were processed, and a human consumed it. And then they ended up at a McDonald's that I happened to go to shortly after them. And it digested in their body. They didn't make it to the toilet for whatever fucking animalistic reason.
Right.
And that
because
shit,
what they're eating was terrible.
And yeah. And their digested food was shit out and ended up on my shoe.
Right.
It's like,
I think
I know that's a real
no, yeah. I think that experience I think ties together a lot of things. First of all, it's very mindful of you to think of it like that.
Yeah.
The connectedness of the universe. Like from beginning all the way to each experience.
Yeah, but it goes even farther back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you could think about you
it's
could
endless.
go all the way back to the beginning of the universe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Have you
That's such a funny concept.
Just like
if somebody was there at the Big Bang, the start of the Big Bang, and it's like this will eventually lead to
the climactic moment is
of Tony
this whole
stepping
universe
shit.
was created for someone to get revenge on you, so you step in some shit.
That's some Douglas Adams shit.
Yeah,
like
totally.
that guy who keeps getting reincarnated and murdered and accidentally
he
killed.
always gets murdered by
Arthur Dent.
Arthur Dent. Yeah, and he just fucking hates him. Like that, his whole existence is.
I don't think I ever laughed harder reading a book when I read the part where they actually encounter each other. And he's just going through all the fucking ways that he's acting.
Yeah.
And Arthur Dent has no.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know who you are. It's like,
oh, really? You've only murdered me in every single one of my lives.
Yeah. It is a sad thing.
Douglas Adams
it is so great. Have you ever seen Watchmen?
Yes.
You know the
So
scene
great.
where is his name Dr. Manhattan?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
Dr. Manhattan.
The coolest comic book character ever.
Yeah,
He's
like honestly,
so
like
cool.
such a good conception of a god. Like being,
Yeah, and so. I mean, obviously because he was made to be, but he's rational and like, but also very empathic and he's essentially a god.
Yeah. There's that scene when he's on Mars with what's her name? I forget her name.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But anyway,
yeah,
he's on Mars with that person he's with, and his whole speech there is like about how like every moment is a miracle and how everything is a miracle because of all the events that had to go right or go in a certain way for any one thing to happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, like every moment is just a confluence of like so many things.
And in his mind, there probably is no such thing as good or bad.
And I think for him, it was like everything is like I think he saw it initially as like everything just happens and everything is normal and it's all this causal thing. But like your story and his eventual interpretation is that in the end something happens that is really meaningful to you.
Yeah.
And for you, in your case, it was a terrible experience of having stepped in poop. But like
Human
for him,
poop.
it was like he in a way loved this person and like what a miracle it is. Even if everything is explainable by like a causal sequence, the fact that at this moment the result of that causal sequence is such a meaningful thing for me is a miracle in some ways, just because it all happened.
Yeah.
You know, and like
there was some beautiful imagery when he built that structure that was like a large clock, just like perfectly. Yeah. That's a beautiful movie / comic book.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. But to pivot away from all that, when you were talking about, we're just talking about ghosts and things like that, and spirit and that, like my experience with terminology and like language and specifically when it comes to religion is one of constant translation. So I have like kind of come full circle because I was raised very religious, and I know so were you too, in the Catholic tradition. And then I kind of rebelled against that for my own personal reasons and like just wanting to understand the world in a way I don't feel like it was allowing me to. And then coming back to like trying to understand why other people still participate in it. And I'm able to now like engage with people who are religious in a very meaningful way by just simply translating what they're saying into something that's meaningful for me. Because the language they use isn't very meaningful for me sometimes. And like even the word prayer, like people tell me how they pray for me, or like how I should pray for something. And like if I was as anti-religious as I had been in the past, I would be like, well, that means nothing to me, or like you know, like that's a bunch of garbage.
It's like when there's a national, there's like a tragedy in some part of the world, and probably primarily the U.S. They're like, we're sending our prayers, and it's like, oh, thanks for doing nothing.
Right. Yeah. Well, in that case, you really are doing nothing when you could be doing something. But like when you talk about like hoping you have a good day or hoping things go well for you, like I use the word hope in my mind when like someone is just hoping good things for me.
Yeah.
And when I, I'm like, I'm apply for a job or trying to do something, and I just hope it goes well. Yeah. It's just prayer is just an intentional version of hope.
And I think you could probably swap out the word prayer with meditation or mindfulness.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's just focusing your energy on it in like in a very intentional and like meaningful way. Not just like, oh yeah, like, well, I hope tomorrow it doesn't rain. Yeah. Like I'm not like actually sitting here and being like, focusing on that sort of thing. But people do that. And I think that, honestly, putting your energy toward that, especially in your own life, if you're just putting positive energy towards something, like it's going to improve at least your experience of it, or your ability to cope with the fact that it doesn't turn out exactly the way you want later.
Yeah. And so, that's, it's a bit of a catch-22, because it's like, if you want to have a better mindset and a more positive outlook, you might have to fake it till you make it at some point. And then at a certain point you actually do achieve whatever level of happiness, and then that carries on through, and then you don't have to force it so much.
Yeah. But you have to practice it. Like it's not easy to have a positive outlook on life, especially when things are hard. Yeah. And life might give you a reason to not, but like once you're receptive to the good things, and then good things actually do start happening, and again, that's out of your control to some extent, but like once you're receptive to them and things do start happening, you can appreciate them more and then grow your own positive experience, and it kind of feeds back on itself.
Yeah. So. And but it's really hard to pay attention to that, and it's crazy, and that's what I haven't looked too much into mindfulness meditation or whatnot, but it's like essentially, like even right now in my life, I'm a pretty unhappy person, but I have everything I need. I saw this another Instagram post. It said, "I'm so rich. I have running water, a roof over my head, my loved ones," and just a list of all these basic needs that we have. But if you have all those things, you're essentially set. So where does this fucking constant discontentedness come from? It's in your own mind. Yeah. This constant anxiety and stress. And if you could just be mindful in a moment and say, It's like constantly you're worried about the whole world falling apart, and there's a tornado somewhere and an earthquake, and it's like, what's going on right now? Right now, there could be nothing negative or positive happening. And it's just you're in the moment. And that's something I was a bit better about in the past. But like just acknowledging that sometimes is enough to get you out of a whack state of mind.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it can be overstated sometimes that like, you have it so good, or appreciate the things you have, because going through something hard is going through something hard, whether or not there are good things around you. And like if you have everything you need, like materially and physically to survive, but like you lose a loved one, it doesn't mean that you should be thankful for the good things you have. In that moment, you should be mourning, and there are some bad things too. But I think you have to figure out at what level like helps you get by, and like what gives you the most positive experience. Because if you zoom out enough, like. And this is the whole problem with like so much news and media and stuff. It's like we hear about so many tragedies that not only don't affect us, but we can do nothing about. Right. Yeah. So it's like, not that we shouldn't care, not that we shouldn't. Yeah. It's just like all it's doing to you personally is giving you this like helplessness about the world, when you might not have, like maybe you're doing as good as you can around you. And if everybody was doing what you were doing, the world would be a better place. But like that all it's doing is digging you in a hole that you don't have to be in.
I hate to always bring it around to Peterson, because I know you don't really love him. But
I honestly, I don't mind engaging.
We need to have a watch session and a discussion. But one of his rules is clean your room, and he puts a lot of focus on strive to be the most self-actualized person and disciplined and caring person that you can be. And if everybody could do that, the world as a whole would be a better place. If but instead it's everybody's, your room is filthy while mine is just disgusting. But here I am telling you need to clean your room. And that's what so many people around the world are just doing.
Yeah.
And that's like virtue signaling and all of that stuff that's become super popular these days.
Yeah. And I think the thing that misses is that everybody would be capable of doing it on their own, when in reality, all of life is a very communal effort, right? So it doesn't help if like I have my room super clean and like you can't get to your room, or like you're suffering so much that cleaning your room isn't even a possibility because you have to worry about what you're eating every day. Like you have to work all day to eat. So like to tell you to clean your room would mean for you to like basically starve. What's the point of me being like, oh, I got my shit together, like you should get your shit together, like you're clearly not doing enough.
And also if you've cleaned your room and you have some energy left over and you see that I'm struggling over here, it might even be not a huge effort to go and clean my room. And then my job now is just keep it clean, and that's alleviated a stress for both of us.
I mean, I would say at that point, like, why shouldn't I just help you eat so then you can clean? Because I don't want. I want you to get you to clean your own room. Like, I'm not trying to say like I'm not to do everything for you, but like I think but I'm like saying like there is a communal aspect that I think that isn't built into those like ideas of the whole like rational self individualized like society that I feel like he kind of. Like I do feel like he's a very compassionate person, and if everybody were like him, the world would be better. But I think what he espouses certain things, like people make excuses as if like they don't need to help those around them. Because Ayn Rand is the same way of like this very like.
But I don't think he's
self-interested.
I just disagree with that.
Self-interested, rational being. Like that's kind of like I think that's their epitome. It's like the self-interested, rational being.
But I think in terms of self-interest, he's always saying like. Start with yourself. We've talked about this before. Just increase your perimeter of helpfulness,
right? And
start with yourself. And he used this terminology. He said, "Start with yourself. If you have energy left over after that, help those closest to you. And if you still have energy after that, and then just expand the bubble."
Right. So what's the difference, like, or why is he focusing? I know you said that he focuses his message to help every single person from top to bottom, right? It has to work for the person worst off, or it's not a good structure. But how come he doesn't focus his effort on the people who have so much and who could be helping their community more but don't? Like, why isn't pressure being put on people with means whose rooms are clean but aren't doing enough with their overflow?
I wouldn't necessarily.
That's a very different message, I feel like. Right.
But I think it's the difference between. I think it's better to make the masses self-efficient on an individual basis rather than relying on somebody at the top to come and fix everything.
Right. And I think that's the problem. And like I've talked to like my dad about this specifically, and like this whole idea that like, there is a unfairness built into society in that like people like us who are just kind of poor working class folks have struggled so much to just like get by, and it seems like something is off balance when somebody is like a trillionaire or somebody who's just completely well off and has more than they need.
And the people say the top 1% has as much wealth as half the entire country.
And the idea is that we built this society. We all live in a society that lets that person. It's not like they didn't do that on their own. Like they didn't create money. They didn't create the economy. Like we all contribute to that economy that lets them flourish, right? So if we allow the economy to be built that way for somebody to be so successful, shouldn't we somehow reap the benefits? And the idea of capitalism, I think, is that
don't you know it trickles down, Alex?
Naturally, it should happen, right? The whole trickle down thing is like if the economy's doing well, all boats rise, right? And like obviously, people in the U.S. are better off, but like the inequality of wealth is just a little. It's a little suspect, right?
And the floor for the masses has gone up. But so it's like if the bottom half has gone up this much and the top half was always, if both in the past have recently gone like this,
right?
But at this point in history, it's gone like this,
and
exactly. It's just
it just seems
the
like
gap is getting larger and larger.
It seems like something's a little off, and there's this like kind of right wing conservative mindset of like, of course there's some inequality and we want to help people. The charity mindset, like I'm a charitable person. I would help people in need, that whole thing. But there's this lack of desire for it to be a structural kind of charity of like, and when I talk to my dad about it, he agrees that there is inequality going on. But when he talks about a solution, he says that like, well, it should be up to the person with the money to give the money back. We shouldn't make them give the money back, but like we have, and this just seems like, so we just have to hope that the people who rise to the top
do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Yeah. Like, and how, like what kind of society?
It's like, are we going to leave it up to Bezos? And it's like during the pandemic, he gained all of this money off of people suffering.
Right.
And the breaks that they're given, it's like most of us working a 9-to-5 paid more in taxes than Donald Trump did, probably in his whole lifetime.
Just because I think, and the idea is that like when rich people don't have to pay more in taxes, they make more money, which helps the economy.
Yeah.
And like, I think for people, on the lower rungs of the ladder, it's like the economy does well and I still struggle to pay my bills and like I am deep in debt. Like,
and also, why are we relying on them to do the right thing and give it back to us as if they acquired the wealth on fair terms,
right?
And it's like, well, we can't make them give it back. It's like, well,
we created the society that let them be that wealthy. Like, we actually literally have the means through legislation to like equal it a little bit, right? And like, as much as people are against like, a more leaning in the socialist way, like there's nothing in our Constitution or the rules that doesn't say that we can't change the rules to move that direction, right? You could argue it's un-American or what, and I do think that we have a very strong capitalist individualistic streak, and I don't think that would be compromised. I do not think we would ever be like an uncapitalist country just because of our roots, you know, that like tilting it a little bit, like Social Security or like any
or Bernie's plan to like tax a fraction of a penny on every stock trading. And they're like, no, we're not budging. We're not giving you a fraction of a fucking penny.
Because they worry that you start there and then all of a sudden
an inch and you're gonna ask for a mile.
And it's just like, then where? I don't know.
And it's like, and I'm not an economist and I'm a dum-dum, but this whole national debt, right? And it's like, who are we in debt to? Obviously, we're in debt to other countries and whatnot, but a large is like we're in debt to the Federal Reserve. And it's like, who rigged the game in the first place to make us constantly in debt with them? How about we say, fuck you, too bad,
Right. Sure. Well, honestly, I would love to talk to an economist because like, as much as I can navigate credit to a degree, I like really don't understand how the credit system is like the legitimacy of it, because it doesn't really make sense to me. I'm like, it's kind of like the landfill thing for me. And I think, have I talked to you before about my whole thing with the landfill? Is like we have landfills now. There's basically these like plots of land where we just throw all our garbage. And like, when I was a kid, I used to play Sims, and like I would always build the waste to like power plants. So like all my garbage would go to my waste plant that would power my city or whatever. And like to some degree, I thought that was kind of what was happening in real life.
I think we do that to some degree in Spokane, at least. Yeah.
But I learned that like for a large section of society, like we just have these landfills where we just throw all our garbage into we just said like, oh, this acre of land,
just cover it up.
This acre of land is where we put our trash and then we bury it. And so I'm just like, whoa, like that. I did not consent to this. I didn't know this was, and like whose idea was it to do this in the first place? It's a little crazy.
Probably the first guy who did it was like, what's a way to save money? Oh, just fucking.
Well, I mean, it might have started in at a time when like everything was biodegradable, like everything was natural. And you're just like, okay, let's just put we can't have our trash in the streets. Let's just go let it decompose out in the woods over here. We'll just all put our stuff here. And then it got worse and worse and worse. And I don't know if that's what credit was like, where at first it kind of made sense. And it was like, you just need something for your house and we want you to have it. Like you can owe us later for it, right? Because you'll make the money later and you just pay us later. But now it just seems like, everybody operates on debt, even the whole nation. And it's like, what is this? Is this how it was supposed to be the whole time? Was this the conception?
And we talked about the whole concept of how like you get a mortgage loan and you could pay it up to 90% of the house off. And if you start to miss your payments for whatever reason,
it's gone.
And the bank takes your house back and they don't even have to buy it back for you for what you've paid for it. It's just theirs now.
Yeah.
It's like, and obviously they're the ones that set up that system. Right. So of course that's how it's
they have interest in keeping it the way it is. That, for their benefit.
So gross. You know? It's just so gross.
Yeah.
One of the things you were saying, this is back to a previous topic about how you turn on the news and it's just full of problems and whatnot. And one thing that Duncan Trussell said, and somebody said it to him, but I gained a lot of insight from, was the concept of tending to the part of the garden that you can touch, part of the garden that you can reach. And that gave me a lot of peace in the sense of you don't have to fix every problem in the world. And just go to what is in your reach for this moment. And then once you've tended to that part of the garden, you can step on to the next round.
I think for most people that's what life is. And there are a few, just based on the way that I think it doesn't even have to be a structural thing. Like certain people are born to be like leaders, you know, and like certain people have more influence just by their natural like weight they carry with them. And those tend to be the people who rise to the top and like inspire people within the culture, you know, whether it's like through, you know, pop culture or whether it's through politics or things like that. And like there are people who can help, whose reach is further, right? Just like you can think about it in that way, like they can reach more of the garden just based on, you know, maybe in this metaphor, it's like they have more mobility or they have longer arms or whatever it is, you know, they, you know, their hose has like a sprayer that can reach, like they have something that allows them to affect more. And like,
isn't it unfortunate that most of the time that ability is finances? It's money.
I mean, honestly, like I'm not anti-capitalist. Like I honestly, there's some good things about capitalism, and I understand that like capitalism is great because first of all, it equalizes everything. Like there's one currency that everything kind of translates into. There is a objective value in things that fluctuates and works, you know, in its own way. And you know, people love capitalism because nobody dictates prices. There's nobody in charge of it. It kind of has its natural.
But isn't that what the Federal Reserve does? Isn't that what inflation is? It's like we're, you know.
And again, I don't know anything about the Federal Reserve or enough to say, but I would assume in its creation it was meant to probably help people who didn't have the say in it. You know, like in terms of like keeping interest rates low for people to.
I wouldn't. Again, I don't like to give them any credit. I bet it was all nefarious.
I don't know.
No, actually,
I really don't know enough about it.
I'll have to do some digging. But the Federal Reserve, I believe, was formed on an island that a bunch of bankers and politicians went to specifically to do some devious, money grubby work. Yeah. And they came back with the idea of the Federal Reserve. And I wish I knew the video I watched on that. But yeah, I think it was insidious. I don't think there was any good intentions behind the Federal Reserve.
The whole financial system to me is like a little like impenetrable to understand because I'm a paycheck to paycheck type person. So it's like,
that goes, man, I was telling you about him today, which you should look into him. He's like a modern day Asian Basquiat, David Cho.
Okay.
He's a gangster, man. And his story's so fucking cool. And we might switch gears a little bit to talking about art. And the whole concept of a 9-to-5. He's very wealthy, but obviously due to his talent, but it was also a big stroke of luck in the sense that I believe it was either Facebook or MySpace contracted him to do a job in their headquarters, in one of their headquarters. And he did this big painting job, and I think they gave him a little bit up front, but they're also like, hey, can we give you shares of the company or whatever? And after it was either MySpace or Facebook, after it blew up, he just became a millionaire, like a multi-millionaire as a result, because he had all these shares that weren't worth that much when he was given them. And he was just talking, I was listening to it on the way over. He's like, I have no needs anymore. He's like, I'm good on money. My kids will be good on money, and my kids' kids will be good on money.
Dang.
So he's like, so I never became an artist so that I could get to the point where only rich people could afford my art. He's like, I became an artist so that the most amount of people can enjoy my art. And he's like, now that I don't worry about money, I just focus on doing the best artwork I can. And he does like free shows and all this stuff. Yeah. But what a fucking weight to be lifted, to not have to worry about any of your finances or your basic needs and food and housing and all that stuff. It's like, God, that's what I fucking want.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel like, less of a true artist, because it's like I'm always like, I just want to get rid of all this bullshit, the fucking 9 to 5, and just get to the art. And it's like, well, at a certain point, you just have to work hard enough to get to that point, and then you can enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole art thing.
I don't like the suffering artist or the
starving artist
as we've talked about.
It's tough for me because I, as an artist who hasn't had a lot of time to work on art lately, like I feel like I still love to do it, and like I have the same mindset of like I would never want to be selling paintings or artwork for like, you know, hundreds of dollars, because then nobody can have it, or only certain people can have it. And
you wouldn't want to do both. You wouldn't. I think this goes back to the war of art, which is like you want to get to the point where your art is self-sustaining, where you no longer have to. And I don't see any problem with having high-priced artwork as long as, you know, you're still at the end of the day doing it for the art. And
we talked before about how like capitalism allows for you to make money off of your art and like be a part of the system, doing it the way you want to do it. And I think, but to do that, I think you have to have an element of like business savvy or entrepreneurship or marketing skills.
Not everybody's wired for that.
Yeah, and I am definitely not. I would rather be the like, I just do this for fun. I love working with other artists, and like if I was ever to make it, it would be by a stroke of luck and like somebody kind of buoying me up, and like, you know, somebody being that partner who like helps me get my shit out there, you know. And like I don't think it's gonna happen on my own as far as I can tell, and I don't want to put in that much work because like I want to be living life in so many other ways, and I'd rather be, you know, I don't romanticize the starving artist. I just think it's probably been for me a more likely outcome of everything, you know. And I've always been okay with that starving artist thing.
And it's maybe it's a result of getting older and a little bit more pessimistic, but I used to be in the same boat where I was just doing it just because it was pure joy and fun. And the older I get, I'm like, I fucking hate this stupid 9 to 5 job. I just want to do art all the time. And now I'm at the point where I don't even necessarily have fun when I'm working on art, because I'm in the back of my mind. It's like this has to have some importance. It has to mean something. You need to dig your way out of this trench and your art is going to be that way. And it's like the best art is free form, free thinking, not thinking about all those peripheral aspects.
I do think once you start making money off of your art, that you kind of, if that is the drive, you have to kind of bow to market forces in some way. Like you have to do art that is marketable. Yeah. Right. And you're lucky if your art is popular. But if
I would gladly sell out.
But okay. That's like, of course, like,
and only temporarily though.
Sure. Like, I would get your money and get out.
Get your money so that you can get to the point where you no longer have to do it for money. And then do all the things.
But I would just say that's the same game. It's like, again, like for some people like who aren't artistic, whose like skill lies in, you know, working a certain business, or like people who are like who do like startups or tech people, like their skill, well, you know, their art form, you could say, is like doing that tech thing and then making their money, and then they can get out, retire early, and then do whatever they want.
It's like there's a example in my realm, my area. It's the same music. Yeah. There's these producers that they have technical proficiency, and they get really popular or well known, and they make a bunch of money, but their music is trash. It's so unlistenable. Right. And there's this guy, Andrew Huang. I don't mind saying it because nobody's fucking watching this shit. But he's really popular. He's like a YouTube producer, and he's made so much money. But his music blows, man. And it's very commercial, and he does a lot of commercial projects, and he's a decent enough teacher. But
does he make money off of the stuff he does? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or like off of producing other people's work or something?
Yeah, and he gets contracted for projects and whatnot. But it's like, it's nothing you would fucking play on the radio, and not that that's a qualifier, but it's like nothing I would leisurely listen to. It's garbage music. But it's like his businessman aspect. He's such a good businessman that he's found a way. Sure. He's a better businessman than an artist. Okay. And that's not something that I have.
If you could make money off of your art, but go down in history as a hack or like a, like pop, like person, where you had like, there was no like soul to your work that made you money, would you do that? Like, cause that's what I feel like is the authentic
that's selling
art.
Out.
Yeah. Cause there are people who like, it's like pop stars, you know, like, or, you know, boy bands or whatever, like they were just the vessel through which
to make money.
Yeah. The vessel through which other people make
yeah,
money. Really,
yeah. It's like NSYNC. The NSYNC and Backstreet Boys are the prime example of that, which is like
they were orchestrated.
They were literally manufactured
yeah.
and put together and hand selected to make money. And also, they didn't make dick at first because their manager was just siphoning all of that money. And there was documentaries because at a certain point, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys were managed by the same piece of shit.
Really?
And he dicked over both of them.
Damn.
Just raped their finances. And God, on one part of me wants to say yes, because again, this is a conversation we had that we're definitely not uploading. There's one reason I want wealth, and that's to take care of my family.
Right.
That's the one reason.
Sure.
So if it meant selling out and making shit music, then I might do that.
Okay.
And if the only other part of the ultimatum is make beautiful art and die broke.
So then is it about the art at that point? That's the question, right?
And is it wrong to want to be in the middle? I don't
think so. Yeah. I mean, I think, again, it's like saying, I always think back, like, what was life like, when humanity first kind of started going out, or when society first started going? And like, I don't think it's a bad thing, like, hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, when like, someone just felt so alive, dancing around the fire, or like felt so alive, like, painting portraits in their village or whatever. Like, would it be so bad to be like, well, you also got to go make sure you have your little crop farm too? It's not like you don't criticize them for like, what a sellout. That guy like is growing his own food too. He spends time growing food. Like, that's not a fucking artist. Like of course it's fine to like make a living. I think that's great. I think getting caught up in the machinery, and like losing, I think that's the thing that people struggle with fame is they lose themselves and they lose their way, because like they basically become a part of the money making apparatus, and that's and I feel like that is what capitalism is. It's a wealth generation thing, and it does that for society at large, but it doesn't really help individual people so much.
David Cho, I just watched the most amazing. I texted you about it.
You got to tell me about David Cho, because I don't know.
I'm gonna pull some stuff up.
Sure. Okay.
We're gonna take a quick break. Okay, so we're back. I almost drank my microphone. I'm Ira right now. So I was talking about David Cho, and I'm going to pull up some of his stuff, if I can figure out how. Let's see. So this is David Cho, one of the coolest artists in my opinion, and just as a person, he's a fucking beautiful person. Like, you see his artwork like this. It's very Basquiat-esque.
Yeah.
That's why I say he's like a modern day Korean Basquiat.
Or he's just David Cho.
Yeah. It's probably insulting to.
I mean, I know.
It kind of is.
It's like what people say about Jackie Chan, where Jackie Chan was, when he started to get big, he was like, they're like, oh, you're the next Bruce Lee. Yeah. And he's like, I just want to be the first Jackie Chan.
Yeah. Is that something he actually said?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's
people
so
constantly
cool.
were comparing him to, Bruce Lee.
There's this dope, he does this rendition of Calvin and Hobbes, which it's a panda. Wow. And like a little, and it's so fucking cool.
Nice.
But yeah, he's just got beautiful artwork. But he did a podcast with Tiger Belly, who he's good friends with, Bobby Lee and Kalila. And he's got a new show called Show. But he's just the most free person. But he suffers with a lot of mental health issues as well. But him and Bobby Lee had this idea a long time ago about handcuffing each other to each other. And spending a month together.
Wow. And
making a little show out of it. And Bobby Lee was like, I pitched it to this place, and I pitched it a bunch of times to these people, and they all said no. And David Cho was like, you're so fucking old right now, dude. He's like, why are you relying on the previous way things used to be done? He's like, you're a free agent right now. You have control over everything. Look at your podcast. It used to be just something you did, and now it actively makes money. He's like, if you do anything from the heart and it's entertaining in some aspect, you don't need permission to do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're my friend. Why do I need to go to some company and ask permission to handcuff myself to my friend?" He's like, "That's stupid as fuck." He's like, "Let's just go to a sex shop, buy one of those fluffy ones so it's not uncomfortable, and just handcuff each other, and people will fucking watch it. I know I would watch it.
Right.
Put it online. And just put it online. He's like, don't focus on making money, just do it.
Yeah. And again, it's like you can do that project, and if it's a worthwhile project, like just do it. And even if it doesn't make a ton of money, like the experience of doing it has got to give you something, right? And off chance, assuming, I know Bobby Lee is very entertaining. I don't know David Cho that well, but like I'm sure it would be like something that would be interesting to watch. So
yeah, it definitely would. But it made me think in my own life. It's like I'm always feeling restricted by my financial means and all this stuff, and like I can do anything I want, really. It's like I always talked about, like maybe like building some kind of sculpture or something. There's a large piece just that looks cool. It's like, what's stopping me? What's stopping me from doing anything? Sure. I have a decent camera. It's like, what's stopping me from making a cheesy music video?
I think this podcast is something you did on your own.
Yeah.
And I've always loved working with people, and like there's so many like collaborative projects I've done in my like career, if you want to call it that. Of just like, I want to do this with my friends, and I want to do this thing, and it'll be worthwhile and a good experience, and like maybe we'll make money off of it, and sometimes we make enough, like we break even, but like often it happened, and then it was done, and then like I'm just happy I did it, even if it didn't go anywhere, you know? So I think that's how you got to go about it.
Yeah, but it's like yeah, man, I just feel so restricted by my day-to-day life, and I hate that I keep harping on the 9 to 5 thing, but it does feel like it's holding me back from so many things. And think of that on the mass effect, on the mass scale. Like how many artists or creators or anything is stifled by the poverty level and whatnot. And
I think we live in a society where like we seem to appreciate art enough, but it's in no way built into the structure of our like government or any way of our organization of our society. But like we will Again, the capitalist part of it is that like we create that space for artists to make money and live off their work if they can break through the noise, but we in no way fund or subsidize art. I mean, we do. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like there's a lot of like public art stuff going on, but there isn't a like nurturing culture around the idea of an art. And I think that's why here there is such that idea of a starving artist, is because like we think part of being an artist is like struggling to break through, and there are so many like artistic people, and I always like hate hearing people when they're like, like, oh, like I'm not good at drawing, or I'm not really an artistic person, as if like art is something you have to do,
be born with,
like, or even just like something you have to do as a lifestyle.
Oh yeah,
because like art is so like beneficial and therapeutic just to do even on like a small scale.
And I feel like the true artists, or not true artists, but like the really great people find art in every aspect of their life. From the way that they make their coffee or breakfast, or do
and
anything.
Honestly, I think there are people who find art in their everyday life, and like there's this quote that like I encountered in college about this. It was from a scientist who like talked about some people say that like trying to understand a flower in a scientific or biological way kind of sucks all the life out of it, but like me understanding
in one aspect, and in another version of that is it amplifies the beauty,
it, right? And again, I would say it's not the like using this like the science or having to know about it or having to like dissect it that drains the life. It's just your orientation toward it. And like he talked about how he was able to see so much more beauty in the way that like flower is arranged and how everything works. And like that's just from his using his own perspective to find the beauty in something through his like own personal like way of seeing it, and like science can be very dry and very like soul sucking, but like it can be an avenue to see beauty. And I think the great people like Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, the great visionaries in the scientific world like do that, and they show us that science can be something that opens up the universe.
And also it's such. The scientific world has brought so much beauty to our lives. Like the first pictures of another planet, that's so awe-inspiring and beautiful, and so much work went into fucking putting like creating a rocket. That's why there's the expression. It's not rocket science, because rocket science is the fucking hardest shit you can do.
But in that rocket science, there is somebody, and this is what I think I mentioned to you before, how most scientists are just like grunt workers. There was somebody just calculations.
Yeah.
Like that was somebody's job, like 24/7. We know whatever their 9 to 5 was of just doing the math to make that happen. And it's such more of a collaborative effort. And in that person's view of science, it was very dry, but like it leads to greater things too. So, and the visionaries help point the way, but like it's a collaborative effort that really makes it worthwhile.
And people like deGrasse Tyson and Carl Sagan, they really brought the idea of science being beautiful to the forefront.
Yeah, it was part of their mission. And I think that Carl Sagan clashed with the scientific community a lot.
Yeah.
Because like he had, he was much more of a public figure than he was like a grunt scientist.
Yeah.
To be
and
honest.
also it's like, that was, I believe it was either his idea or somebody close to him's idea. It's like when they sent one of the ships up to get data, they were like, hey, why don't we turn the camera around real quick and get a shot of the Earth? And that created the iconic pale blue dot image.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And it wouldn't have necessarily happened without an artistic mind thinking of doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do we want to go from here?
So we kind of initially talked about maybe talking about religion a little bit. I don't know if you want to turn in that direction, or if you want to talk more about just being creative and the struggle with creativity and the 9 to 5 aspect. I also thought about just the idea, and this can kind of tie back to religion in some ways, of just finding meaning in life. I know we've talked a lot about that. And because we're both creative people, I think we find our meaning in the creative work we do.
Yeah.
But on the way over here, I was listening to the Tyler, the Creator album, Igor.
I thought you were going to say Luther Vandross.
Oh,
yeah.
But he has this line about how, I think it was something like, he doesn't live in fear except for the fear that like one day he'll die, or I don't know exactly what the line was.
Yeah.
But it just makes me think of that saying memento mori,
And what does that mean again?
It means remember that you will die. Remember that I will die, or something like that in Latin. And it's just this idea of like, that adds weight to your life if you remember that like at some point your life will end.
And there's no greater sense of regret than the regret getting to a later point in your life and realizing you could have done something, and that's my biggest fear.
Yeah.
And it's almost self-fulfilling in the sense that I'm always fearing that, and it freezes me in my tracks and I don't get anything done.
Well, one of the great American thinkers, what's his name? Henry David
Peterson?
Thoreau.
Okay, yeah.
He's not American.
What?
He's not American.
I said Tony Peterson.
Oh, Tony Peterson. They said Jordan
Yeah.
Peterson. You are American. But Henry David Thoreau, and it's this quote by him that I always try and remember. I'm not good at remembering quotes. It's a longer one. It's from Walden, when he went out to do
I think
his
I'm going to
nature
know this
thing.
one for once.
Yeah, it's that I went to the woods, not... I don't remember exactly.
You can just do your version of what it is.
Can I? Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I should look it up.
Yeah.
Is it worth looking it up?
Yeah, we can.
Or no, maybe not. So basically what he says is like, I went to the woods like to like really experience life. Like to make sure that when I came to the end that like I had truly lived what it meant to live.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to get to the end and be like, well, I never really knew what it was like to like survive in this world.
And I strive for that too. I want that so bad. Yeah.
And like, we talked about him before and like how, I think he's known for having like constantly gone back to like read the paper every day in the city.
Yeah,
it's not like he lived out there, and did like, was, roughed it the whole time, but it was like just about encountering the world on the world's terms, and like really knowing what that's like.
And that's something we're all so far removed from now.
Yeah. And I think he experienced that in his time in the 1800s, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, can you imagine
how much
these
worse
days?
would it be? Yeah. And that's why so I think it's named David Prinicky, the guy that was showing you that and he was just basically saying, he's like, I'm living the truest version of a life a man can live, just living in the woods and appreciating nature and doing what I have to get done in order to even just survive on a day-to-day basis. And now we're so cushioned. We have cars. We have a store where we can just go and grab a stack of meat that somebody else, slaughtered and butchered and packaged for us. And
again, it's that alienation from like real life. That,
and it
gives us this artificial sense of
it
what
removes
it is.
that natural sense of meaning and purpose that we used to have intrinsically in our lives when we lived a much simpler life, you know? And so if we no longer have that, which is a basic human feeling that used to be alive in our culture, if we don't even have that and we have nothing to replace it with, and so we can't even fulfill our artistic endeavors or passion projects or anything like that, it's like then you just feel soulless.
Right.
And that's when the regret sinks in. There's Bill Burr was talking about these two artists. I think one was a comedian, another was some other superstar. He didn't want to say who they were for some reason. But he was talking about one guy that he viewed as like the guy. He's like, he did it. And on his deathbed, the guy was like, so much wasted time. So much wasted time. That's my biggest regret. And Bill Burr was like, you feel that? He's like, in my eyes, you did everything. Right. So I feel like no matter what, there's always going to be a bit of that feeling. But you got to decrease that as much as you can.
I mean, I think just like the whole memento mori thing, like there's this other saying that like some people view philosophy as basically a way of learning how to die, like in like a, you know, in an accepting sort of way. And I think
that's going to be hard for me.
When you really come to terms with it, if you really are engaging in life, when your time comes, whenever that is, like you should be ready.
Embrace it. Yeah.
And like that's how Socrates went out, was like, this is just the next step for me. Like,
it's almost like a greater version of when people talk about leisure time, and it's like the work hard, play hard. It's like when you're just lounging about and that's your whole existence, sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, watching TV, you lose so much meaning. But when you put in the work and you fucking worked out at the beginning of the day, then you did your job, you did your art, and at the end you're just so pooped, you can actually enjoy that leisure time. It's like when I'm doing nothing but leisure time, there's so much angst and depressiveness that comes about that.
Wait, so you're saying there's too much leisure time?
Yeah, I would say so in my own life. It's like oh god, I feel so bad for my dad. It's like he works really hard, and it's that I think we might have touched about this on the unreleased episode, but it's like everybody's working for the weekend, and that's what we're doing. It's like the whole structure of 7 days a week and a 9 to 5. It's like on a day-to-day basis, you're like, let me just get through this fucking work day, and then you're so exhausted when you get home. You're like, I just want to do nothing.
Yeah,
and then the culmination of those 5 days, that's 5 wasted days. And then you get to the weekend and you're like, I worked so hard this week, I'm just going to relax this weekend. And then you get nothing done on the weekend.
Right.
And then that's a cycle. And then that builds up to weeks, months, years.
Life.
Your whole life.
Yeah.
And what did you get done? Right. Nothing. And that's the biggest problem I have with the 9 to 5. And it's not that I'm against working. I'm for working hard and working, but it has to be meaningful. And it also has to... Why is it that, Walmart is one of the biggest employers of the United States, but a large proportion of their employees still can't afford their basic needs? Some of them are on food stamps and housing and all that stuff. It's like, that's not right. I
mean, that thing is, it may not be right, but it's legal.
Yeah.
So, and again, it's how we like structure our society and things like that. So, I mean.
So it begs the question, how do you find the time? It's like I have so much guilt about how I haven't worked on music in months probably at this point. And that's awful for me.
Yeah, but you haven't worked on music, but you've spent hours working on this project.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like, so you're clearly finding some time to do the projects you want.
Yeah. But again, it's just, I want it to be my whole existence. Like Tyler, the Creator, when he released his latest album, he's like, I put hours into this. He's like, we woke up early, stayed in the studio all day, just making that. And that's what I dream of. Yeah, like when that's your whole day, that's your whole weeks, months, and years, just doing your project. Like, that's fulfillment.
And that's where, I can see where you say like, you have to make it before that happens. Before you make it, there you got to live that dual life. You know, and I think we've talked about this plan A, plan B thing. Of like, for me, it's you gotta be living your life while being open to that possibility.
Yeah,
but if you
not banking on it.
Yeah, because if you bank on it,
but
your life passes you by.
How do you feel about the quote from Will Smith? And Will Smith is a real particular example, but he said, "Don't have a plan B because it distracts from plan A." Sure. And part of me wants to embrace that wholeheartedly, but at the same time,
I think
no plan B.
Yeah, well, I think it's like
you say your plan. A should include plan B.
Yeah, your plan A should include plan B.
Yeah.
But like it's the whole carpe diem type thing, and like I used to think about that term carpe diem, which is like seize the day, and like it had this sense.
Oh
of
my
like,
God! Sorry to interrupt you. I'm not an Avenged Sevenfold fan, but the lyrics just click. Have you heard the song Seize the Day?
No.
Seize the day, you die regretting the time you lost. It's empty and cold without you here. But those first lines, I never thought about them, but it's the first line is seize the day or die regretting the time you lost.
Yeah.
That's a pretty deep lyric for a fucking metal band.
I mean, carpe diem is kind of a cliched statement at this point, but like that, I used to think of that as like carpe diem as if like act out all your desires today or you won't be able to do them tomorrow type thing. And I always felt like, how can you live your life that way and do everything you want every day? Yeah. Because like at some point, like if you're just going to keep living, you're not going to be able to really build on anything. Like if it's like, well, my ideal day is like just like hanging out, partying, and like just like having a good time.
Or if you're a serial killer, your ideal day is
sure, that's a whole other moral thing. But like even if your day is just like hanging out, enjoying life, having a good time, like if you do that every day, would you be satisfied with life?
Yeah.
Like I think I kind of came around to understanding that saying in a different way of like carpe diem is like do everything you can every day to enjoy the life you have, and like when you come to dying, know that you got as far as you could. And it's like it doesn't have to be like this is the last day. It's like this is another day on top of yesterday that I got to like go further. And like make sure you're moving that milepost every day.
That
or
makes
at least
me
enjoying where
think
you're
of
at.
our first episode in the Amazon analogy. So is the goal then to keep in mind that you may never get out of the Amazon? So just
right, because you might not, right?
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
and in terms of like our society, it's like there might not be an escape from the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And honestly, for most people, there isn't.
Yeah,
You know, like
yeah.
and again, like the way it works is like we have this whole fantasy that like everybody could be successful, but like our society would collapse if everybody was successful.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like if there were no minimum wage workers, like businesses wouldn't exist. So it's like the whole thing would fall apart. The idea is that anybody could be one of those people who break through and become successful. So knowing that it's possible you might never leave the Amazon, like make sure you set up a good life in the Amazon, right? Or enjoy the Amazon.
Or else you're going to get to the end of your life and you spent the whole time unhappy.
Yeah.
And maybe there was never a chance to get out of the Amazon.
Right.
So you wasted your whole life just being upset about it.
Yeah. And I think it sounds a little defeatist to say it in some ways, but like, again, the whole like, remember you will die, like making sure you've confronted that fact and like being prepared for that is like
buying a cryo chamber.
Like the what?
Buying a cryo chamber, being prepared, freeze yourself.
That's again trying to escape it, right? It's like the idea is that you get to the end and you're like, all right, like I did as much as I could, like, and like I enjoyed it some of the way. Or
so
maybe you didn't.
Do you think you're doing that in your own life?
Again, I think I try, and again, it's all about the orientation of your like consciousness to life in some way. And it's like you know, I haven't had a chance to work on art. Like working on this has been great for me too, but like I haven't a chance to work on my art in the past year or two. But like again, like my life is a different project right now. My life
and
is
your
my
current
family,
project is your son and your wife,
my family, and like where we want to set up the rest of our life. That's kind of what we're working on right now. And like I'm enjoying it as much as I can, you know, and like I don't feel like it's taking me away from anything. Of course, there's feelings of like, oh man, I wish you know, even working on this, I'm like, oh shit, I wish I could have done more editing today, or I wish I could have come into the studio with you and done some more work. But like, you know, it's the whole like, whatever I'm choosing, I'm choosing it. I don't feel like I've been cornered into my situation.
And I see, that's the thing. I feel like I've been cornered.
Right. And some people have. And some people have no choice, and they are cornered in a situation. But like at any moment, you know, I could leave and then start a new life somewhere else, or you know, and I would never do that. But
get
like,
a new wife, make a new baby.
There's you know, there's like the idea that I would never do that is because I would never choose to do that. And again, it's my choice to stay where I am because, and I think for you too, it's like your choice to stay here. Like, you know, and you do choose to stay here as much as like, you know, the situation was like dumped on your lap. But like you are a autonomous person with that and ability to choose.
God, it's weird because I think I have a different dynamic with my family than a lot of people in the United States, because it's the remnants of how people are raised in a third world country. So like we talked a bit, I don't think it was on a podcast, but how like in some countries the kids live with their parents until they start their own family, and that could be 30, that could be 40.
Not even in third world countries.
I'm kind of stuck in that realm in the sense that I want to live this life where I'm doing my own thing and possibly in a different city or state, but then I think I'm away from my whole larger family, not even just brothers and sisters, like my aunts and my uncles, and we are going to die someday. Yeah. And every time I leave my family, when I get out of the proximity of my family and I come back, they've aged. All of them. They're older. There's new ones. Everybody's got gray hair. They're balding. And it's like time speeds up when I'm away from them. It's like it's the fucking Interstellar thing. When I'm around them, time slows down and I can see them. I don't notice time moving forward so much. And then when I get away, it's like everything speeds up. Yeah. And it's like you have to make a sacrifice in one aspect. Do you want to go and live your life, or do you want to slow time down and live in your...
But again, each choice is a certain kind of life you're living. So you can choose you can live your life here if that's what gives you meaning in life. But like it's a choice, and it's not an easy choice. And I'm not saying there's not a right choice, but there's a choice you have to make in that. You know.
So what do you think about? I've expressed to you, I think yesterday, everything feels so stagnant right now. You know, like I'm not making any day-to-day progress. It seems like with work is barely paying the bills. Mm-hmm. And as a result of me putting so much time into work, which I don't put nearly as much as you do, but it's such a big part of my day, I don't have time to do all these projects as much as I'd like to. And I also feel like if I did give my all to these projects, it would speed up progress in my everyday life if I could find a way to. But I don't know. I feel stuck. I always feel stuck. Yeah. And if I'm not feeling stuck, I feel like I'm moving backwards.
Huh. I mean, is there anything in your life right now that is giving you life? You know, like, is there anything going on that is giving you life?
Mostly this, in a sense. This is if I didn't have this, fuck, man, I don't know what I'd be doing. Right. The rest of my life is so it's not fun. It's so I don't know. This, I would like to start meeting new people, new collaborators and whatnot.
I mean, I think whenever you're stuck and part of it is like my own personality is like, I just really enjoy new things, you know, like learning new things and experiencing new things. And like I always like inviting a little bit of chaos into my world to you know,
shake keep things up.
Keep things moving. Cause, my fear, like my deep seated fear, and this you know is a part of my personality kind of deep down, is that I'm really worried about stagnating. You know, I'm really worried that I will crystallize into a person before my life is done and just be going through the motions. Yeah. And that's not what I want to do.
And that there's some similarities between that and working out, I've found, because I've recently restarted working out and eating healthy and all that stuff. But when it's easy to keep momentum going than to build momentum, you know? And so if your life is stagnant, it's hard to break through that and get the ball rolling.
That's inertia.
Yeah. And it's
that's a very, that's what inertia feels like.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about inertia as a physical thing that happens to objects in the world, but from the inside, that's what inertia feels like. Is it takes so much more energy to get the ball rolling than it is to keep it maintained.
Yeah, that's such an interesting concept. So right now I'm just trying to think of what could be done to get the ball rolling, because in my life it's so fucking plain and flat and uneventful and I don't know.
Yeah, and I think for me it's always something new, and I've been in situations so there's a part of me that seriously rejects that stagnant part of life, and to my own detriment at times, because even when I'm in a place, you know, I used to have a job, I was doing something I was good at, I enjoyed it, kind of fulfilling, working at the print shop, and I was making a good amount of money, had great benefits, but something in my psychology was this is somehow crushing you. It was there wasn't anything new happening, and at first I experienced it as this almost knee jerk, I started disliking people around me, and I started resenting my work, and
I know what all of those things are like.
Yeah, and I would just come home and feel really bad, and just want to go out to the bar, and it just was this reactive thing of I can't, something is wrong, you know, and I eventually worked through that and tried to reflect on it and be I just can't be here no matter how good it is, and I was pretty good at my job, and I talked to my manager who I was so close to and I worked so well with and learned so much from, like learned so much about life from, not just like my job. And like, they wanted me to stay, and like they offered me a raise. They gave me a raise, and like it was nice for a bit, but like that didn't solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I have to leave. Like I just have to quit. Like, and I was starting to cause issues with like my coworkers and stuff because I just couldn't handle it. And like I dropped the job, and I switched gears in life, and it made things a little bit harder, and I had to do a little bit more work, but like I just needed that, and it like kind of sucks because like if I had taken advantage of it at the time, like I could have probably set myself up to do more art and be more creative, but like something deep down just wasn't, I couldn't deal with it. And it's a weird thing for sure, but I just had to like listen to myself in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't really know where to go from here in my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's always sounded to me like you haven't really been able to find a home in any structured job that you've had. And again, I think it's part of like having to answer to someone. Maybe I don't know what it is for you.
I don't want to accept that it's home. I don't want to be part of that.
Right, and I think
maybe that works against me.
But I say this a lot to you, is that like your job has to be a part of your life.
Yeah.
Like, because did I say this to you yesterday? Of like we said it several times that 8 hours a day is
most of your life.
Yeah,
most of your waking life.
It's a third of your, if you sleep 8 hours, it's a third of your time and half of your waking life.
Yeah.
So like,
and then it has residual effects on the hours that you're not working.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, even the week, it bleeds into the weekend, like all the stuff we were talking about. So like, if you don't accept it at least as a part of your life, as like you are living during those 8 hours, so make sure that you're okay with the way you're living. You know? And like, it seems like you just haven't been able to do that, like even in all the service jobs I've worked, I really enjoyed working at Hattie's in Seattle, like at the bar. Like it was a way for me to like feel like I was a part of the community and like to meet new people and to like experience new things. And like, even when I worked pizza delivery or my first job was at Dairy Queen, it's like I like became a part of that job. I didn't like take it on as an identity, but like I enjoyed the people I worked with, and like we had good times and we'd hang out after work. It was like it just had to be
maybe those are the aspects that I'm discounting when I'm thinking of being sucked into the machine and being part of. I don't think of the camaraderie and the late nights working together and then going out afterwards. And
I mean, some people don't have that in their 9 to 5. In fact, actually, I'd say in 9 to 5 jobs, again, those are all not they're not like literal 9 to 5s. Those are just like work. But like in the 9 to 5 jobs, I feel like it's harder for someone, at least my kind of particular mind and personality, to like when I worked at the print shop, like I would work that job. And most of my coworkers were like older, like there's a lot of salespeople there and stuff. And I had a couple peers my age, but like we didn't jive so much because like we didn't have the same kind of like lifestyle. Like that work had nothing to do with our lifestyle, So we would maybe hang every once in a while or something, but it wasn't like a real fulfilling type of hangout. And I learned from my older coworkers, but I didn't necessarily live life with them. So I would work that job and then go home and like have a whole separate life. And it was very disconnected. And, I'd go out with friends, or I'd, go to the bar by myself and just hang out and read and stuff. And I think it was a bit, maybe the disjointedness was part of it. And I feel like with 9 to 5s, unless you work in like a young area, like the tech sector or something, or where you just have peers more of your age group and mindset, like maybe it's easier, but I feel like that does alienate you a little bit more from.
Do you think you're, would you consider yourself a disciplined person?
No, I don't think I'm disciplined. I think I'm really good at forming habits.
Yeah.
So I just try and like work that to my advantage and like set myself up for like positive habits.
Because I always wonder how much of my unhappiness and lack of progress is due to my lack of discipline.
Right, you said that before.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm so unhappy with my weight. Okay. Be more disciplined about your eating habits and about how often you work out. I'm so unhappy with the time that I have to work on art. Okay, maybe wake up earlier, get the important stuff done earlier, and then you'll have time for your art. And man, the days feel so short when they're filled with your work,
Yeah.
They feel so short Because even in the morning before work, you're just prepping to go to work, and then after work, you're so tired when you get off.
Yeah, I think that's where, like, for me, and like I think for you, I think it's learning about what's stopping you from being motivated to work out more. What's stopping you from waking up early in the morning. When I was at my most creative, I had the weirdest sleeping cycle where, like, I would get up at like 2, 3 in the morning. Like, I would fall asleep maybe a little early because I was tired, and then wake up 2, 3 in the morning and like have a smoke and like work on art and watch, anime or TV or whatever I had going on. I was living alone at the time. But like that would just be like my working time, was like my random wake up in the middle of the night, or I'd wake up but it wasn't like I was like, okay, wake up at 2:00 in the morning, or like wake up at, it just happened, and like, when I was working at the print shop, I would get home and I would have a routine again. Like I have a real, like, for better or worse, ability to like cement habits really quickly and like kind of get into the flow. Like I always try and ride whatever wave I'm on. And, it was like, I'd get home and like, if I'd check in with friends or with my partner, and like, and if I was feeling like going out, I would, I had like the neighborhood bar I could walk to, which is so great about Seattle, is that like, I felt so connected to my neighborhood that like, I'd be like, I'm just going to go down for a drink. And like, I'd go and I'd read. And I'd read and I'd get into like this mind state, and it would just get the juices flowing. And like I was like hanging out at a place I liked. I was doing something that like I felt was fulfilling and productive, and it usually would lead to doing something creative. Like that was always kind of what sparked it a little bit.
Yeah, and that's where I get a little bit stuck in the creative aspect, which is like everybody says to, create some form of art, you actually have to have a life that you're living outside of that. And that's another area where I feel like my artwork is so stagnated, because I'm not living a life outside of that. So it's like I have nothing to draw from.
Well, and that was so great. The thing that was so great about working in the service industry was that like you are always meeting new people. Or when I always went down to the bar, like sometimes I'd go to the bar, and I'd maybe talk to the bartender a little bit. And I'm not a very like, I don't talk a ton, So we'd have little conversations, and slowly they would get to know me. And sometimes it would spark, and sometimes it wouldn't. And like a lot of the times I would just go to the bar, I'd have a few drinks and I'd read, and then I'd, walk home or whatever. But every once in a while I'd meet somebody, and like they wouldn't be the most interesting person, but it would be this whole perspective I never thought about before. And I would just like take that in.
That's why I've thought about, and now that I'm vaxxed, maybe this is a possibility. I would like to start doing podcasts with like elderly people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What did you say?
I said randos.
Oh yeah, no.
People from the bar.
But it's crazy because even randos, anybody you meet, pretty much every person on the earth has some weird history or stories to tell you.
Again, like we said, like there are some absurd people out there.
Yeah.
But it's just like I'm just so fascinated by like, how do you think this way? Like I accept it as like this is another person who's like gone through so much life that this is where they're at.
Yeah.
Like, and I just want to understand how that
serial
happens.
Killers.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, that's an extreme, and that's a whole other moral thing. But like, yeah. There's something that made them that way.
Yeah,
there's a causal chain. Right.
Yeah,
and the causal chain doesn't have to be a necessary one, but it's a possible one.
Yeah. So. I'm trying to think. Tiger Belly does this unhelpful advice segment, which is like their closing segment. I'm trying to think if we could start doing a closing segment. I wonder what.
Maybe we can talk about, I always think about, that's kind of where the whole never seen it stuff comes in, is what media is currently affecting me most in my life, or what media I'm trying to get through right now.
Yeah.
Like as a way of like making sense of my world.
We can talk about. That's hard for me because mine's mostly Family Guy.
or I mean, it's your podcast too, though. I feel like so much of your worldview comes from the people you listen to. And actually, I was thinking, we kind of talked about the whole controversy around certain podcasters like Joe Rogan, and how like people say you shouldn't be getting your advice from them anyway, and the blowback from them giving advice that is maybe controversial and things like that. And I was thinking about it, and we talked about it in terms of like, well, yeah, if that's who you're getting your advice from, like maybe it's not the best advice.
Yeah.
If that's how you construct your worldview. But I was also thinking like, who should we be getting our advice from?
Yeah.
Like, cause like there isn't an agreed upon, like even to say like, you should listen to the scientists. It's like, really, do we all agree on that? Like, and is that where we should be getting our information from?
I think Fauci himself you can fact check me on this, but I think Fauci himself said, if you are contesting Fauci, you are contesting science.
Ugh. See, nobody is science.
It's like, what the fuck does that mean, dude?
It's like when people say...
That's like, I'm infallible. Like,
well, yeah, and it's like when people say like, well, science says, it's like, no, there is no like board of science who says like, oh yeah, this is science currently has this opinion.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not how science works. It's a very democratic like field, you know, like
and as far as who should we be listening to, and this is why I mostly, and actually probably almost exclusively, listen to comedian podcasts. Comedians, what are they if not funny semi-philosophers? You know, they're breathing in the world around them and then processing it through their own experiences and shooting it back out, and it's just in a funny manner.
Right.
And
but there are also good and bad philosophers.
Oh yeah. But I don't know, like who would it,
yeah. I mean, when I was thinking about it, I was like, you know, we can say that maybe you shouldn't be listening to a comedian, but it's like a lot of people trust Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like where they get their information from, he's a very trustworthy person to them.
Yeah.
So like he is giving advice to people who trust him.
Yeah.
And they are going to take that advice and run with it because they trust him. Yeah. Like they trust him more than a scientist they've never met.
Yeah.
So like,
or I definitely trust him more than fucking Bill O'Reilly or some talking head on a news channel.
Exactly. But some people trust those people. Some people trust Tucker Carlson, you know, and it's like that's where they get the information.
But not
from.
Even just on the right side, on the left side too. You got a bunch of nutbags who have a whole industry machine on them. Yeah.
So I think it's just like, again, we have to think about like where our information streams are coming from, and like those people have to admit that, you know, if they said as a joke, like go like get this person or go after this person, that people would listen to them and take them seriously. Like even if it was out of context, even if it was XYZ, like that they carry weight due to who they are, you know. And I think that's, you know, again, it's like they aren't responsible for the action, but they can't deny they have an effect.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I mean, sorry, that's a kind of I digress from the conversation. But like,
I am trying to think of, and we can edit any of this out because I'm just kicking back. My brain's kind of dead honestly. I haven't been too great this episode.
Well, maybe like, what's a movie, what's a book that you have, that you are wanting to read or have recently heard about, or I don't know.
God, my life has been so uneventful. I think I've just been getting by, and especially with this heat, I think we've all just been trying to make it through the day.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I'll let you go first on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Clementine and I just watched this movie, Woman in the Window, which was kind of like a thriller based on this novel by this ridiculous person. I've learned so much about this person. Clementine read this book, Woman in the Window, and it's this like kind of thriller mystery about this kind of like a Disturbia, which is based on Rear Window by like
Alfred
Hitchcock. Well, I mean, it's like a similar sort of story. Basically,
it's like a voyeurism kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like so this woman in the window, she's an agoraphobic person who's stuck in her home.
So she lives her life through what she sees through her windows.
Well, she just ends up kind of seeing things around her, and she has her own trauma, and that's part of the story too, where like you're not sure if she's really experiencing the world in like, or like kind of hallucinating some certain things. But it's this thriller written by this guy. I don't know if his name's actually AJ Finn or if that's his pen name. But like I learned, Clementine read the book, loved it, and I watched the movie, and it is like a very engaging, you know, thrilling movie. But the guy who wrote it like is like this guy who kind of has just lied his way through life. Like he's gotten into schools and he's gotten like jobs by just lying to the people he's talked to, and like it's worked. And he wrote this book that was like an international bestseller. Kind of going through that ladder, and like clearly he's good at making stories, but he's also like legitimately lied.
That's probably why he's good at making stories.
Maybe, yeah. But like he clearly just has this like altered sense of how the world is and how he should comport himself in the world. Anyway, it's such a interesting tale of his life that not only did he write this book that like was an international bestseller, but like they are now, and they made a movie off of it, but they are now also making a movie about him.
Oh, you're talking in real life.
This is a guy.
I thought it was a character.
Oh, no. Sorry.
Oh,
so
crazy.
in the story, it's just about this woman, this agoraphobic woman who like thinks she sees like a murder happen, and you're not sure if it happened or you know, what was going on. And there's that whole mystery of the book. But then the guy who wrote the book is also this like crazy guy who like, lied his way through life. And it's such an interesting story about him that they made a movie about his book, which was like a big seller, but they're also making a movie about him. Cause like, and it's like, I don't know, it's just crazy, kind of weird. Like,
is he still alive?
He's still alive. I think he's a pretty young guy, but like, it was just really interesting to hear.
What did he lie about in his own life so much?
Just like, so I think he got into a school. I can't remember all the details, and I might be misquoting some things, but he got into school and got scholarship or something, by like saying like his mother was like, he had just gone through all this trauma and like his mother had died and like he had gone through this hard life, and he's given like speeches at like schools and stuff about this traumatic life he's lived and how interesting his life has been and how it's impacted his career. And like none of it's happened. Like his mom's still alive and all this stuff. And like he was working as a publisher or like an editor or something at like a book company, and then eventually wrote his own book. And I don't know all the details, but it was so interesting to me because like it kind of seems really sleazy, and it makes me want to be like, well, should people be reading this guy's book? Or like, did this guy rise to the top legitimately? But like, the book was a bestseller. And then I think about like the people who are in the movie, because the movie is stacked with actors. You know, it's Amy Adams and Julianne Moore and Gary Oldman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like a big cast. And I think Jake Gyllenhaal might be playing him in the movie about him or something.
It's so weird.
But it's like, he kind of got there illegitimately, but like there was something compelling, or there's something like he actually wrote something that people were interested in, and now he's like made a big success off of it.
That's very interesting you're talking about this guy, because I listened to a podcast with Eliza Schlesinger. She's a comedian. Schlesinger. I don't know how to say it. And she was talking about, she's actually, I think she's making her own movie. And it's about, actually she did make her own movie. It's about a boyfriend she had for 3 months who was initially just her friend. And she actually really didn't want to date him. But the movie is essentially about the guy you're saying. Because she had to break up with him and stop and cut off all contact with him because she later found out that everything about his life was a lie. So they met, I think like on a plane or something, and he said, yeah, I work at this big firm, like this like economist kind of thing. And they said he was wealthy and like he had like a really nice car and stuff. And so he lies about all this stuff in his life, and it turns out he's working this like low level job.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I just bought this house. And she goes to the house and is like, there's a girl at the door. She's like, I'm his roommate. Like this, he doesn't own this house. And then he's like, the way he like guilted her into dating him, because she said, she flat out said, I have no interest in dating you. He pulled like the sympathy card and said, yeah, my mom has cancer and all this stuff. Shit, yeah. And so she like became close to him like in a nurturing way, and they ended up dating. And then she finds out like he doesn't have the job that he's saying. He doesn't have this nice car and nice house that he's saying. His mom doesn't have cancer. And it's like, God, how do you live your entire life around built on a lie? And then it's like the momentum. And then so she didn't speak to him, and all she did to end things was like, you're a fucking liar. Everything you've ever said to me is a lie. And he responded, I know.
Right. And it's like, what kind of person like thinks like that's the way you live life?
It's insecurity. And it's
but the only thing that really keeps him going is the fact that it works.
And the momentum of not letting up on the lie, because you'll be caught, you know. You'll be found out to be a fraud.
But like I don't like the thing about this guy who wrote that book that I was talking about is like, you know, he made tons of money off the book. And then he probably made a ton of money for them to make it into a movie. And then people found out all this stuff about him. There are articles written about him.
But the book is a nonfiction, right?
Yeah, it's a nonfiction.
And so, I mean, there's...
No, yeah, and it was like a book that people loved and it was interesting and all this stuff. And Clementine read it before we knew any of that. And it was like, yeah, it was a really compelling book. But then, like, there's all these articles written about how he was, like, such a fraud.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure he made money off of selling his story to be made into a movie. God, and it's crazy. Like, who...
That's really fake.
Like, what a weird...
Fake it till you make it.
Validation of, like, his way of living life.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you hope that person gets their comeuppance if, like, they lose it all. But, like, no, it seems like, you know, I don't know what it is. There's like, it's like a weird validation.
And then one day you become president.
Exactly, right? And like, what the most validating thing
I'm the most successful businessman. Everything I touch turns to gold. And it's like, no, you're fucking in debt and your companies are closing.
But it doesn't matter because
And then you create a big phallic building made out of gold to symbolize all of your... He literally has gold buildings. It's like...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the thing. I just watched that last night, and it's like that's kind of been running through my head. And it was just an interesting story, and I was like, it just made me think about how, like what a controversial, what just like a weird story about this person who seems to like had have no
moral,
or like there's no comeuppance for them.
Yeah.
You know? There's no there's no lesson learned, I don't think.
I don't know. He's lucky, I guess.
I don't know. Just like it's another weird quirk of the world, you know. He just like kind of. It's like when somebody like trips and falls into success. You know? And,
That's what I'm hoping to do.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Trying to think of a way to close this out.
Well,
Again, my brain is mush.
Well, so I don't know. This made me think a quote that I wanted to say earlier, or an idea that I wanted to say earlier. It's like I consider myself a patriotic person, and I think like there are a lot of great American thinkers out there. And to kind of maybe bring it all the way back to the beginning, when you talked about dreams and hallucinations and ghosts and things like that. John Dewey, who's he's kind of known for his stuff on education, American thinker, philosopher type person. What he said about dreams was that dreams are just as real as our everyday life. They just have a different relation to the world than our waking experiences.
Yeah.
So it's
what does that mean exactly, though?
Just that like we shouldn't discount dreams as if they're like not real, because they affect us. They have some meaning,
and they spring from our own mind.
Yeah, it's just that we don't deal with them in the same way. Like, you know, let's say I have a dream that like my friend was mad at me, right? It's very real and very meaningful that I had that dream. It just, I don't go to my friend the next day and say, why are you mad at me?
Well, some women do that when
some people do. Yeah.
You cheated on me.
And that's where it's like this, you know, and whenever anybody says stuff like that, I'm like, well, that's you thinking that. Like, there's something that you got to like think about because you're the one.
But, or do you? Or is that dream completely debased from reality?
Well, and I think that's what Dewey is saying, is that like, it's not that it's not real. Yeah. Because it is real. Yeah. I mean, you experience it, and it probably affected you. Like, and that's probably why people bring it up, is like, you cheated on me in my dream. Yeah. Is because it affected them. Yeah. They had to react to it. Like last night I had a dream that like I was in this field by the river with Archie, my dog, and like there were all these wild animals, you know, in the field behind us. And then we were trying to get out of the field, and I was like trying to get him to follow me, but he kept like going up to these other animals, and he got like stung by this porcupine. Yeah. And then there was this bear that like grabbed a hold of him and threw him, and it was like a traumatizing dream, you know. And like I woke up, you know, and I know it's not real, you know, but it's like, it makes me wonder, like, what am I feeling?
That'd be so funny if you and Archie both woke up at the same time. Like, did you see that shit? That fucking bear.
But Archie has been like, he's been feeling a little neglected, and like he's been in an odd mood the past couple days, even, of like he's been really kind of needy, and like I think the heat is killing him, you know. And like, you know, there's probably my own receptiveness to his attitude that's put that stuff in my mind, but like it's not that like that dream means nothing. It just doesn't mean I should be worried about Archie getting mauled by a bear tomorrow. Yeah. It just means that like maybe there's something
and also maybe it only means what you perceive it to mean. Like you know, you maybe you can assign the meaning behind it.
And I think life is that way too. Like, you know, it's like someone can step on some poop in the bathroom, and it can be a hilarious thing, or it can be a life like
and it
can ruin your day.
It's so funny, or it could do both.
Yeah, because it could be so angry, or it could be like, I don't know.
It's well, in the moment I was pissed off, and I was outside the McDonald's just like muttering, just like fucking motherfucker, just like wiping the shit on the gravel. And
human shit is so much worse than stepping in dog poop. Right?
Yeah,
like,
if it was dog poop, I would just be that fucking A.
Right. Yeah.
But it's human poop, and I'm just like. Unless a dog went into that bathroom and shit on the floor, but I don't think so.
I doubt that one. I doubt that.
I know we're trying to wrap up, but
sorry, I didn't mean to like start a whole other conversation.
I'm actually gonna do that too just now. Even though I'm sorry guys, my brain is so mushed out right now. So the heat is really burning me out. One thing that gave me a lot of peace, and its effect has decreased since I heard it a little bit. But it was so helpful in terms of my inner peace when I heard it. It's another Duncan Trussell is just such a beautiful being.
Such an interesting. I don't know much about him.
You got to listen to his podcast. He's so insightful, and he would go on these yearly retreats with Ram Dass, who's just like the most.
Ram Dass.
He's
Did he start like a personality type thing?
No, he's like I wouldn't know how to describe him, but he's a very deep thinker, and he was all about the acceptance of death and accepting it gracefully and making peace in your day-to-day life. But the quote Duncan Trussell said was, so many people are in a state of anxiety and, self-hatred and like, because I always say like you alone more than anybody has a recording of every shitty mistake you've ever made, anything you've done wrong in your life, all the things your insecurities, everything you hate about yourself, and that compiles. And one thing that really gave me some inner peace was he said, as fucked up as you are right now, if you are, in this moment, give yourself a break and say, and don't say to yourself, you need to get to this point and then you'll be okay, or then you're not forgiven. But he's like, give yourself a break. Right now, you are everything you need to be. You are where you need to be, and find peace in that. And extend that break as long as you can, and appreciate that self-forgiveness. And that was like, that provided so much peace to me, because like my whole life I'm just like, I suck, I'm an asshole, I'm a shitty person, like all this stuff. And you just like, you would never go to a friend of yours and hold over their head every mistake or transgression they've given to you, right? Or action they've taken to you. You would never just hold on to that and throw it in their face every second. They wouldn't be your friend.
Right.
How are you going to be a friend to yourself if you're constantly holding everything you've done over your own head? You'll never find inner peace that way.
Right.
And it's a weird thing, because it's like, there's something to self-flagellation. It's like you need to,
it keeps you going.
Yeah. But at a certain point, you do need to.
It becomes detrimental.
Yeah, at a certain point, it's holding you back, and not only that, maybe even solidifying some of those things and crystallizing them, making you a worse person.
Right.
And so, the act. This is a huge divergence from anything we've talked about, but that was just something I found very helpful, and it's not something I'm used to. I live in the realm of like self-hatred. Like I'm a piece of shit. I revel in that.
Somebody said to me once, because I can be self-deprecating a lot too, and somebody said to me, describe yourself as if your best friend were describing you.
Oh.
And I initially wanted to be like, well, they probably just say like, I'm a nice person, but like, not very interesting, or I'm a nice person, but like, something else that's self-deprecating.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. I'm like, well, you know what? They probably wouldn't be my friend unless they thought something good of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I was really authentic and answered that question, my best friend would probably talk me up a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
so
most
like,
definitely.
So like I was like, okay, let me try and describe myself by talking myself up.
Yeah.
And it really kind of changed the way I thought about it for a sec. So I was like, well, if I had a best friend, they probably, think highly of me in some respects. So what would they think highly of me for? They'd probably say, oh yeah, he's a really good artist, and like he's pretty smart, and he teaches me new things. Like, and I was like, I would never say that about myself.
Yeah,
but like,
exactly.
just like changing that perspective.
Or even,
really
I don't know if you
bit.
include, if Clem would be your best friend, but like, or your spouse.
Sure,
how would
exactly.
Someone
right?
who loves you more than anybody, how would they describe you? And they wouldn't make a list of all terrible things, or not even terrible, but shitty things.
Because if they thought that, they wouldn't be around you.
Yeah. And when Tennille came and she was speaking about people who are homeless, and they're like, people view them as such a, like an annoyance or whatever, and like a problem. It's like, or people who are drug addicts and they come into their facility, and it's like, she pointed to Heather, and she's like, Heather is smart and helpful and funny and beautiful, and she's like, if I could choose anything to attribute to that person, why can't I choose one of those?
Right, exactly.
And it's so hard to do that to your own self.
Yeah, it is.
To like Duncan Trussell said, give yourself a fucking break.
Yeah,
that is, to me in my own life, that's probably the hardest thing to do, because on a daily basis, for the most part, it's just me adding up the blocks of all the things I should have done but didn't do, or all the mistakes that I made in that day that I could have avoided, and instead of. And
those things don't have to, like, there's maybe some truth to that or something, but like, again, it's all your orientation. So just like, maybe for a day, just turn around and look at the other blocks that are there, like, just like face in a different direction for a day. Yeah, for a day. Yeah. Or even an hour, as whatever increment that you can stand, and then turn around and do another thing Duncan Trussell said, which is tend to the part of the garden you can touch. Yeah. And that's a great way to close it out, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Yeah, I liked it. It was good. It would have been better if my brain. But you're not going to sing the outro music?